The Gospel of John follows a completely different pattern. Because the Gospel of John is what we believe the least like what Jesus of Nazareth did in his ministry, as far as any sense of episodes and things that happened in it. Now, that is likely to suggest, since Mark, Matthew, or Luke have none of these I am statements, something that would disturb some people. Jesus probably did say them. He probably did not say, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the gate for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection of life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Because in all the other Gospels, it is clear that the focus is not on Jesus from Jesus, but rather on God. All the Gospels call us in relationship to Jesus' Father, to God, to a way of life. And Jesus is constantly saying, follow God. Give your whole hearts and minds and everything to God. It's very few people that he says, follow me to. Only a handful. And it's never about worship. That never seems to be something that Jesus is interested in. So what's happening with all these I am statements? Well, context. Now that you're saying you preach from it for all the time. What I say all the time is context matters more than anything. John's Gospel's context is near the end of the first century, many years after Jesus' death. And the key point that almost everyone would agree on is that the Gospel of John comes from the time after the great temple of Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70. We have one concrete date. Everything else is debatable, but one concrete date. That in the year that we call 70, the Romans sacked Jerusalem again, but this time they destroyed the great temple. And all those who were Jews and connected to Jewish community life had to find a new way of going forward. You can bet there was lots of debate and argument and wrestling over what is the faithful way forward. And I want to be careful here because sometimes the way Christians frame the argument is that we had this way of following Jesus, and it was rejected by our brothers and sisters and pushed us out, and we're the righteous ones in following Jesus. That's not a fair summary of what happened. Because whenever a group of people in the midst of a community, especially a marginalized community, find different way forwards, there are some people who are really accommodating of others, and some people who are intolerant of other viewpoints. And the most likely thing that happened is that it got so heated that the two groups, at least these particular groups, couldn't share space anymore. And some would argue who drew who out. And if one was justified or not, we don't really know. But we're also talking about two marginalized groups who should be together, but because they had a fundamentally different way at that point of understanding things, they went apart from one another. Instead of focusing on the real problem, the Romans, they started arguing amongst each other and said the other is the problem, the other has a problem. Now, I don't know if John's gospel writer did that. I certainly don't think he hoped that would be the conclusion. But what he was one who believed that in Jesus was not just a faithful way to comprehend and have a relationship with God, it was an eternal way of doing so. One that was faithful to all the traditions that had been brought forth. So he structured his gospel in a particular way. Rather, instead of starting with the person whose life goes to the cross, where does John start his gospel? In the beginning. The Word was with God and was God. And that's key language. That's the first key language. Because Word and way was the way that people had come to understand Jesus. And so the first claim that the gospel writer uses is that this is something that is faithful to the beginnings of time and is completely one with God. Uses a series of metaphors, I am statements, to engage his audience about who Jesus had become for them. Because, I'll be honest with you, all 7 of these, I give my heart to every single one of them. But I don't think Jesus said them. And I don't think that's what Jesus of Nazareth wanted us focused on. Justice, peace, hope, a way to use one's power differently from dominating and destruction. But in those who follow Jesus, they saw these things. The bread of life, the light of the world, the gate for the sheep, the good shepherd, resurrection and life, way, truth, and life. And finally, the last one, Jesus is the vine, and we become the branches that can reach out to others in hope, new life, and possibility. John was making it clear that these faithful people who followed Jesus did so out of their Judaism, for those who were Jews, and those who were Greeks did so out of their heritage as well too. That all that came together in this new way of understanding God's eternal presence in the world, and how God was to shine through us. Now again, I don't know if John was hoping to persuade people to believe like him, or was simply saying, please, we deserve a seat at the table. It could have been both. But we also know the whole story and what happened once Christianity and the Roman Empire became one. This text was then used to say, this is the one and only way to believe and to be faithful and not go to hell. And that has done incredible damage, not just to non-Christians, but the foundation of Christianity. Turn your page over. Not mine, because I gave them the right one. But if everyone else turns the page over, is the questions that I want you to engage not only this singular passage, but any of these I am statements, which have to be done in the context of John's Gospel as a whole, in the late 1st century and early 2nd centuries. What was this Gospel writer really saying to both followers of the way and persecutors of the way? Was the focus to worship Jesus? Or to have a fundamental sense that this road was a faithful road leading to God, and that all the faithful roads will ultimately, at the end of the day, converge with one another? Because the Holy God is the Holy God. tell you which way to believe this. The I am statements have the most power when we give our imagination to it, of what's really being said, and hope for in a community of faith. All right, I guess someone said this is our homework. Yeah, it is your homework.